Welcome back to Combat Mission Fortress Italy, where it's 1943 and I'm taking the Germans out against unremarkable Sumrays Brits for some PvP. What we're playing is a quick battle with a bit of a twist. Conventional quick battles involve two players fighting over the same set of objectives in a way that creates a lot of predictability. When both players are trying to be on the same X at the end of the battle, both players are interpreting terrain and courses of actions from the same perspective. The twist here is that we're not playing with set ground objectives. A bit like the Platoon Patrol series, we have a map with a variety of landmarks. We have areas A to E down the centre to occupy, then 3 spot heights on either side to touch. The game itself is a tiny quick battle which gives us enough points for an infantry company of some description and some attachments. The idea is that we pick our force, randomly select a letter objective and a number objective, and then have at it for 30 minutes. When the time runs out, we evaluate, use the end state forward line of troops to adjust the deployment zones, and progress to a follow-up game where we can build off the situation the original randomness created. That sounds a lot more complicated than it really is. Hopefully it's going to give us a string of linked games with a lot of interesting tactical dynamics that you might not get in a one-off conventional quick battle. Setting this in 1943 certainly puts some quotation marks around the interesting in interesting tactical dynamics if you're the Germans. This is a time period where the very effective infantry anti-tank weapons of German forces familiar from places like Normandy are not yet in service. There are no Panzerschrecks or Panzerfausts. The humble Sherman is incredibly scary and needs specialist assets to deal with. First though, I need to pick my infantry company. This is super easy for the German army in CMFI's July 43. There were only Panzer Grenadiers on Sicily, so that's what we've got. A dismounted company with the usual regular experience and no modifiers weighs in at 750 points. I've only got 1174 to spend, and this makes this the floor of my compulsory options. You do get a lot for your money though. In this period the Panzer Grenadiers have 12-man squads, each with 2 MG34s. With 3 squads per platoon, that's 6 GPMGs at platoon level, making for 18 overall, plus a small horde of riflemen. On top of that we have a weapons platoon with 4 tripod-mounted HMGs, and a pair of 81mm mortars. There's a lot of combat power here. The company does have a mounted option. No half-tracks are available, but they can come with trucks. The trucks in question, though, are just restricted to the Protz 70. This is a fancy truck design, but at least in combat mission you can only fit 9 men in the back. That's decidedly inconvenient when you have 12-man squads. Each platoon comes with 6 trucks by default, and the infantry are pretty jumbled up in there. I could swap them out for Opel Blitzes, which can carry 19 passengers, but transports are eating into my points budget, and I have other bases I need to cover here. The nail in the coffin for the trucks is the terrain. My deployment zone is up in the northeast corner of our map. This is a mostly wooded area with one road leading out of it. That road is totally dominated by Hill 56, which is on the opposite side of the map, not too far from the enemy setup zone. If I was in that corner, I would absolutely bomb rush a tank or something up to Hill 56 on turn 1 and lock that road down. Even if I sent a platoon down there lightning fast, sending the transports back to pick up more troops is going to be really risky, and that assumes I'm even going to need to go in that direction anyway. If my objectives are all on the other flank, all that wooded terrain and the bare exposed hillsides are really going to limit my options. So transports don't seem like a solid investment. It's not a huge map, it's about a square kilometre. The infantry can walk. Instead, I need to use those points to bring along some anti-armour capability. Specifically, I need something that can kill Shermans. The two problems I've got here are that I only have 424 points to spend, and that we're on Sicily in July 43. That narrows my own tank options down to Panzer IIIs, Panzer IVs and Tiger 1s. The Panzer III is nice and cheap at about 190 points, but the 3M with the 50mm gun is going to struggle to score pens on the front of the Sherman, and I'm not too confident in the stubby 75 on the 3N, and that's before we factor in how shockingly vulnerable the Panzer IIIs are. The Panzer IV is more capable with the long 75 and a little bit more armour, but it's also really fragile, and with all 3 available marks hanging around 245 points, I'm only going to be able to afford one. That's no good. Being one mistake or stroke of bad luck away from losing all of my AT capability is not a place I want to be in. The Tiger definitely reduces those risks, what with the heavy armour, and the 88 can certainly deal with anything that might come my way. But it's even more expensive at 379 points. That's a big chunk of my remaining budget for something that is super capable right up until the moment it isn't. One broken track or one hit on that muzzle brake and I'm back at square one. Whatever I bring, I need at least two of them for some redundancy. Stugs suffer from the same pitfalls as the Panzer IVs, whilst lacking the turret and being mysteriously expensive. Anti-tank guns are certainly an option. The Pak-40 has got the reach and penetrative power to ruin a Sherman's day. But it's also difficult to manoeuvre, and in a situation like this, where I have to advance up the map through rough terrain, it's going to be both slow to deploy and slow to get out of trouble if engaged. Assuming, of course, I can even find a good position for it. That leaves us with tank destroyers, or mobile AT guns. There's only one option here in this period, the Marder II. That's essentially a Pak-40 on tracks for 138 points. A pair costs 276, so just a little bit more than a single Panzer IV. They have their own problems, no machine gun, open crew compartment, no turret, very light armour, but they seem like the best choice. That leaves me with 148 points to spend. I've got infantry and I've got anti-tank. The other part of the tripod is artillery. Most of this is too expensive, and I'm not sure calling in fire missions is going to be very practical. The mix of terrain and uncertainty about enemy objectives is going to pose a lot of problems. Direct fire mortars, on the other hand, are considerably more flexible. The Panzer Grenadiers already have an organic 81mm section with 2 tubes. Adding another 2 teams gives me 4, and I can allocate 1 to each rifle platoon for the rapid application of high explosive or smoke, plus 1 in the rear as reserve. They cost 51 points each for a total of 102, and 46 left over. There's not a lot you can bring for 46 points. Target reference points are always useful though. Even if it's not clear exactly where Unremarkable Sunray might go, I know that Hill 56 overlooking the road is an important position. It's a prime spot for an FO team or a tank. A TRP up there is going to both let me direct mortar fire on it very quickly and give my 2 Marders an edge if they get a chance to engage something up there. TRPs are 30 points each. The remaining 16 went towards bumping up 1 Marder and all of the HQ units to Veteran. Loading into the map with force selection out of the way, the next step is to roll up my objectives. My Occupy objective, the area I need to be sitting on and controlling at the end of our 30 minutes, is the North Bridge. That's pretty convenient. The woods in the deployment zone flow downhill almost all the way there on either side of Hill 47. My touch objective, meanwhile, is Hill 56. That's less convenient. Although it's on a straight line from my setup through the North Bridge, it's a long way away. The direct route covers a lot of exposed ground, and I've already identified it as a position I think Unremarkable Sunray is likely to take. So immediately I'm considering Hill 56 as an additional objective. It can be the Phase 2 to the North Bridge's Phase 1. In terms of planning, I'm intending to keep things relatively conservative here. Apart from the Marders, I'm entirely foot mobile. If I find myself out of position, I'm going to be slow to react. Grandiose maneuvers are not the order of the day here. I'm going to send my infantry forward with 2 platoons up and 1 back. First platoon is going around the left of Hill 47 and down to the stream, where they can continue onwards to the south or pivot towards the village and the North Bridge. Third platoon is going right around Hill 47, through the woods down to the road where they can carry on to the village or swing right towards the logging camp woods. Each of these forward platoons has one of the HMG sections and an 81mm mortar in tow for direct support and or to set up in favourable positions along the way. Second platoon is hanging back behind Hill 47 as a reserve. One of the 2 remaining 81s is going to set up on Hill 47 itself as soon as possible. The other is lurking on the left edge of my deployment zone with the Weapons Company HQ, which gives them a radio connection if I need some indirect. The Marders are out on each flank, Marder 1 on the left with the veteran crew, and Marder 2 on the right. If I was Unremarkable Sunray, like I keep saying, I would get some fire support or observers up on the high ground outside his deployment zone as fast as possible. So the Marders are waiting for anything to peek over hills 57-1 and 56, and hopefully get the drop on them. The company HQ is going to hang around in the woods doing HQ things. I forgot about the TRP during deployment, so it's going to spend the entire battle in my setup zone. Wasn't that a good use of points? It takes the leading platoons a good 6 minutes to reach the bottom of the hill, by which time I've spotted a good amount of enemy activity. Unlike me, Unremarkable Sunray has brought some trucks along. Judging from the succession of spots, it looks like he dropped smoke on the road beneath Hill 56 on turn 1, then sent a Stuart and several trucks full of infantry down it. That takes them off onto my left flank somewhere, and while I could potentially have engaged the passing traffic with the Marders, they were focused on the ridge line above the road, out of position with no line of sight. That ridge is still a major concern for me, but I'm not seeing anything up there, and now I also have to factor in the potential for that Stuart to have crossed the south ridge and gotten up onto the hills on my left. So Marder 1 reorients, heading into the woods of my deployment zone where it can cover hills 57-2 and 57-3. After a few turns, the enemy trucks head back. They look like they're empty, so all their passengers are presumably on my left. I've got a couple of the HMGs set up now, on Hill 47 and in the nearby woods, and try to shoot up the British vehicles as they make the return dash. It's a long way though, and it doesn't look like the fire has any effect. Despite that, it's clear that Unremarkable Sunray has sent forces onto my left, so I start to filter 2nd Platoon forward down through the woods after 1st Platoon to reinforce that flank. By this point, 3rd Platoon has spread out at the corner of the road. There's a low ridge in between the village and the logging camp. 3-1 crosses the road and heads along the right side of it to screen that flank, while 3-2 starts to advance around the left side, down the road towards the north ridge, detaching a 2-man scout team to head up to the crest and get a better view. From there, they spot a Sherman. It's set up next to a dilapidated building near the road. With the building on one side and one of the small hills near the village on the other, it's got a pretty good keyhole onto the low ridge, as well as the freedom to move forward and potentially start engaging the area around the north bridge. That's a problem in waiting, but there's also an opportunity here. We both know that the core of the other's force is an infantry company, and that leaves a finite amount of points for attachments. I've already seen some trucks and a Stuart that will eat into those leftover points. It seems reasonable that I'm only facing a single Sherman. If I can knock that out, I'll gain a significant advantage. So I order Marder 2 down the road to join 3rd Platoon at the low ridge. Predictably, I get an infantry spot on the top of Hill 56 the instant the Marder takes its eyes off it and drives away. So I ordered the 81mm on Hill 47 to target the summit and at least force them off. The Sherman engages some of the infantry teams I sent up onto the low ridge. That's obviously not fun for them, but it does imply that the tank has area fire orders that will focus its attention in specific directions. That might give me some openings for Marder 2 to pop up and make a successful engagement. So we get 5 minutes of cat and mouse, where I'm shuffling my infantry teams about on the low ridge. The Sherman is trying to engage them, and I'm peeking the Marder over the crest to try and get a shot off. Neither side is very successful. Somehow all the infantry make it, and the Marder never gets the spot. 1st Platoon, meanwhile, has followed the stream down to a bend where there's a footbridge and a house. I've split them down there and lined the teams up across the valley. The potential for enemy infantry to be further upstream in the direction of the south bridge has been confirmed by now by a brief spot. I don't want, or really need, to go further in that direction in order to secure the north bridge, at least not yet. Securing the bridge is going to involve occupying at least the close side of the village. Some elements of 3rd Platoon are already there. 3-2 has left its scouts on the low bridge and pushed up to occupy the church on the other side of the bridge. supported by one of the HMG teams setting up in a house where they can enfilade the north edge of the village. The 3rd platoon is getting a bit spread out now though. They're in the village, on the low ridge, in the edge of the Luckenkamp woods, and back across the road at the corner. With 2nd platoon coming down behind 1st, I'm thinking of diverting them into the centre to specifically secure the north ridge and the village, which would give me a more cohesive hold on the objective and let 3rd platoon close up. Before I make that decision though, I've gotten fed up of trying to deal with the Sherman. The main problem with trying to engage it is the house it's hiding behind, so I decide to knock it down. I switch the Hill 47 mortar from targeting Hill 56 and get it lobbing shells at the house while I order Marder 2 to join in. It's at this point that I realise I've been too cagey with the tank destroyer's pop-up attacks. I haven't been going forward far enough for the Marder's gun to clear the crest of the low ridge, so it doesn't actually engage the house and may well have failed to spot the Sherman earlier because it's just been too far back to see or fire over the crest. The 81 manages to knock the building down on its own, but not before the Sherman drives off to the left and I lose sight of it. I've been seeing a little activity on my right during this period, a few glimpses of more trucks to begin with, before some infantry appear on Hill 52, and more consistent spots appear at the railway huts to the northwest. These spots are mostly made by a scout team I've split off from 1st Platoon and sent up to establish an OP on Hill 57-3. Getting eyes on my far right wasn't the real intention there. I was really aiming to try and spot the missing Stuart and whatever else unremarkable Sunray has sent over the south ridge. So I'm only slightly surprised when, while the Sherman house collapses in the centre, a load of enemy infantry contacts crest the ridge next to the huts. They start taking some potshots at Marder 2, which had been rear on to that direction with the crew exposed a few turns earlier. Some of the MGs in 3rd Platoon's rifle squads return fire, and we have our first proper contact on our hands. I can count 2 Bren gunners and a 2-inch mortar team up there. I feel confident rounding that up to a platoon strength element. Presumably, Unremarkable Sunray sent them round there to enfilade the low ridge while I was busy focusing on the Sherman. I have plenty of firepower on hand to respond to this though. 3 of the HMGs on Hill 47 and its lower slopes open up, along with the 81 attached to 3rd Platoon, firing from the low ridge, and the 81 attached to 1st, which is just setting up in a new position downslope of the Hill 57-3 OP. The Brits take a couple of casualties, but pull back in the same turn, which indicates they were ordered to disengage. They disappear back over the crest towards the railway huts and the service track, long before the mortars get the range. They could easily bug out from there. Thanks to the trucks, they're plenty mobile, but that same mobility means that Sunray can pop them up pretty much anywhere. I was probably lucky to get away without any casualties of my own, and while my fire support was on point with a quick reaction, I'm even more inclined to send 2nd Platoon into the village and allow 3rd to concentrate on the right flank. This takes us to about halfway through the battle. I've got a toehold on the north bridge. I don't think I'm going to ever get to Hill 56. I'm leaning left with my infantry platoons and could in theory try to push down the valley to the south ridge, then cross the stream and work my way along the edge of the bog towards the hill. But that's a long way. There's not a lot of time left, and I'm pretty sure Unremarkable Sunray has at least an infantry platoon backed up by a Stuart and a Sherman in the way. That doesn't mean I don't want to try the valley. I know there are enemy troops in there somewhere. If I can force them back, I'll be able to consolidate my hold on the centre. It's also an area where the Sherman and the Stuart will find it difficult to intervene, and my money is on the Panzer Grenadiers in an infantry-only fight. So 1st Platoon starts to move forward in the wood. I've essentially got a chain of fire teams across the bottom of the valley, with 1-1 and 1-3 to the left of the stream, and 1-2 to the right. They make contact with 10 minutes left in the clock. A scout from 1-1 gets shot and a firefight quickly erupts. The scouts got engaged by a British fire team relatively far forward. It looks like there might be more further back, but line of sight is patchy. We're in a wood. Some soldiers can't see more than a few meters, others can see and engage across the entire contact. 1-1 reacts immediately. I've already got them split into assault and base of fire teams. The base of fire opens up with its 2 MGs to suppress the lead enemy, while the squad leader takes the assault team in to finish them off. and the other two squads come up online to support, though 1-2 gets engaged from an enemy section across the stream to their front. There are casualties on both sides. I managed to wipe out the lead enemy team, but lose 4 men in the process, including the scout that triggered the contact. It's hard to say who's got the upper hand after the first minute, but the Brits immediately bug out. That exposes them to fire from the Panzer Grenadiers, but saves them from getting mortared. My 81 on Hill 47 is out of high explosive by now, but the other 3 81s can draw a line of sight into parts of the wood, and I'm able to bring them into the fight very quickly. It looks like Sunray pulls back to the top of the valley side in front of 1st Platoon, where we trade a bit more fire until I can adjust the mortars and force them back off the crest. I'm pretty satisfied that this has cleared out the valley and secured the flank of the village, which 2nd Platoon has been steadily occupying. They've taken what looks like a couple of random spotting grounds, but there's been no real resistance. My main concern as the valley fight winds down is what the British armour is doing. I've suspected for a while that Sunray, Stewart and Sherman have crossed the river and could potentially fall on my flank via Hill 57-3. That's why the OP is up there, and it probably should have been up there a lot earlier. They've been joined by one of the medium mortars, but there's no anti-tank capability up there. Unless those enemy tanks get close enough for infantry to mob them, the Marders are the only way I have to deal with them. So Marder 2, down by the low ridge, has reoriented to cover the crest of the 57-3 ridge, staying hull down with spotting support from 3rd Platoon, and I've sent Marder 1 up onto the slope of 57-3 itself. This was principally to get into position to quickly exploit any opportunities revealed by the OP, but it also put the tank destroyer in position to dominate the road running under Hill 56 to the south ridge, in case Sunray tried to use it again. Instead, the OP picks up the 2 British tanks advancing through the hills. They take some pot shots at the OP and drive the surviving soldier off the summit, while I reverse Marder 1 all the way back to the map edge, where it can hopefully enfilade anything coming over the crest. Between the 2 TDs, that makes a kind of crossfire on my side of the ridge. It sounds clever, but Marder 1 is really vulnerable to getting bum rushed, and Marder 2 will be on its own if the enemy doesn't come far enough forward. As events pan out, the Stuart seems to have stopped to engage the OP, and I bring Marder 1 forward to try and get a shot in. By the time the Marder's in position though, the Stuart has moved off, leaving Marder 1 hanging. The light tank heads off towards the map edge after the Sherman, which is now popping up hull down on the crest to engage the OP. The mortar team takes a few casualties, but luckily the Sherman is too far back to see Marder 1, which is distressingly close under its gun. As I quickly reverse the Marder back down the slope towards the tree line to get it out of trouble, the Stuart rushes over the crest on the map edge and hooks back in. Speed and some dead ground on the ridgeline prevent Marder 2 from spotting either tank, and I'm incredibly lucky I moved Marder 1 forward because the Stuart would have run right into it. I'm doubly lucky that the dead ground exploited by the light tank to get forward also stops it spotting the Marder before it reaches the safety of the woods. I say safety, the Stuart starts to prowl along the edge, and I don't fancy the Marder's chances against it in a close-range fight where the fast turreted Stuart is going to be much more reactive than the fixed gun tank destroyer trying to rotate in place on its tracks. So Marder 1 reverses even further back into the woods. It does have a little support. I've been moving the weapons platoon HQ up towards the OP, given that they've got binoculars and a radio, and I've diverted them across to help Marder 1 with spotting. That puts them directly in front of the Stuart as it advances. The light tank is focused on the mortar team though, and they're able to force the TC to button up with some small arms fire. Apparently not spotting the HQ team, the Stuart rolls right past them, allowing them to indulge in some close assault and actually immobilise it. The tank definitely notices that when they've been chucking hand grenades at it. The turret turns around and machine guns the platoon leader and his radio man. But the Stuart has stopped right in front of Marder 1. The crew make the spot, put a 75mm AP round straight into it, and brew it up. That was a little close for comfort, but problem solved. The surviving crew bail out and run off into the woods, where the 4th Platoon XO actually manages to take one down with his pistol. After this, the Sherman reverses off the crest and disappears, and there aren't any major actions in the remaining couple of minutes. I try to expend the rest of my mortar ammunition on any targets I can spot in depth, while more spotting rounds land in and around the village, but nothing decisive happens. When the timer runs out, combat mission returns a minor victory for the Germans. That's pretty meaningless in this context because we're interpreting things to different standards. In terms of casualties, I've lost 13 men, mostly in the valley and up on Hill 57-3. Unremarkable Sunray has sustained 22, plus the Stewart. So a slight edge in my favour attritionally speaking, but not a major difference. My objectives were to occupy the North Bridge, which I've done, and touch Hill 56, which I have not done. His were to occupy the South Bridge and touch Hill 52, both of which he did achieve. So my battalion commander might be very angry with me for not doing what I'm told, but we're not done yet. This first meeting engagement is just setting the stage for the next battle, and I think I've gotten myself into a very strong position here for follow-on operations. That's partly why I'm not going to do a lot of post-battle analysis here. We're only getting started. I don't want to give the game away just yet, and on top of that, the plan is for Unremarkable Sunray and I to get together and have a conversation about what happened, so there's that to look forward to. A huge thank you and a shout out to Unremarkable Sunray. This has not only been a lot of fun, but it's really interesting to approach combat mission like this. There's a lot more uncertainty and persistence than your average game. He is, of course, another combat mission YouTuber. Go and check his channel out, it's full of great stuff. That's it for now though. We're going to have to decide where we go next, but I think we have a really good base to build off here. If you'd like to see these videos early and support the channel, you can do so via Patreon and YouTube memberships. Whether you do or not, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.